Hi everyone, this is Bethany Martin, and this is my presentation for the week on constructivism. Like you know, our class is EDU 61570. I chose to focus on the constructivist theorists of Erik Erikson, Lev Vygotsky, and Lawrence Kohlberg. Erik Erikson was a psychoanalyst. He believed that personality develops in a set order, and each stage that he developed adds content to the next. So it was in a set system. He also stated that completing his 8 stages of psychosocial development creates a healthy personality. Erikson's theory contains 8 stages. During each stage, the person experiences a psychosocial crisis, which could have a positive or negative outcome for personality development. These crises occur when the psychological needs of the individual conflict with the needs of society. These are the stages of psychosocial development according to Erikson. I liked this picture because it shows the different ages as well as the different names of each stage. And obviously it gets more complex towards the end of the stages. In infancy, it's trust versus mistrust, then toddlers, autonomy versus shame and doubt, preschooler, initiative versus guilt, grade school, industry versus inferiority, teenager, identity versus role confusion, young adult, intimacy versus isolation, middle-aged adult, generativity versus stagnation, and older adult, integrity versus despair. Trust versus mistrust focuses on hope, and this is ages 0 to 1.5 years old. The infant is uncertain about the world and looks to their primary caregiver for stability and reliable care. This focuses on the development of senses of trust. If the infant cannot rely on their caregiver for consistent care, then they may have problems trusting others later on in life. Autonomy versus shame and doubt focuses on willpower and will, and this is age 1.5 to 3. Child's sense of independence is growing, and they should be supported and allowed to complete tasks on their own. If they are discouraged when completing tasks on their own, they may become shameful of their own abilities and less confident. In initiative versus guilt, the focus is on purpose, and this is ages 3 to 5. Child interacts with others and initiates play. They should be encouraged to initiate activities with their peers. They should not be shamed for their self-confidence, or they may develop guilt towards their actions. Industry versus inferiority focuses on competency, and this is ages 5 to 12. The child gains self-esteem from peer group by performing competencies. They should be encouraged to develop their skills. If they are not encouraged, like if a child were to be overly good at reading, and if someone were to make fun of them continuously about that, they would become discouraged and would see that they don't want to utilize that skill they have. At the same time, they could see students that are better at reading than they are and develop a sense of inferiority versus industry. With identity versus role confusion, the focus is on fidelity, and this is ages 12 to 18. Adolescents search for identity through exploring personal values, beliefs, and goals. This can be very confusing because they are exploring who they are, essentially. With intimacy versus isolation, the focus is on love, ages 18 through 40. The focus is on forming intimate, loving relationships with others. Some may have problems with forming these relationships, and it may result in isolation. Generativity versus stagnation, the focus is on care, and this is ages 40 to 65. The sense of being a part of the bigger picture. So it's based on your accomplishments in life and what will be left behind when you pass on. This can be either you're generating a lot of love and support and good things to leave behind, or you realize that you have a lot of regret about your life. Ego integrity versus despair focuses on wisdom, and this is age 65 plus, is looking back on life with a sense of closure. So it's looking back and being proud of your life versus looking back and not having the sense of being ready to move on. Lev Vygotsky is the next theorist. He was a Russian psychologist, and his theories founded constructivism. His theories promote active learning roles, and that's obviously the constructivist thought. Vygotsky's social development theory. Social interaction precedes development. Consciousness and cognition are the end product of socialization and social behavior. So social interaction encourages the development of the child. Vygotsky believed that social learning occurred before development. Every function in the child's cultural development appears twice, first on the social level and later on the individual level. First between people, interpsychological, and then inside the child, intrapsychological. The more knowledgeable other, or the MKO, determines that any person that has a better understanding or higher skill level than the learner. These examples could be teachers, coaches, elders, older peers, even computers, or peers in general. Like I mentioned earlier, there may be students that are better at certain skills than others, and they would be considered the more knowledgeable other. And this is someone that the child can learn through social learning. They can learn the content better through their peers or through an expert than they could on their own. The zone of proximal development. According to Vygotsky, learning occurs in the ZPD, or the distance between a learner's ability to complete a task with supervision and the learner's ability to complete a task on their own. So it's between them completing the task with someone supervising them, like a teacher or another peer, versus them completing the task on their own. Internalizing social tools and skills lead to higher thinking skills. Lawrence Kohlberg is the last theorist. He was an American psychologist, and he was influenced by the work of Jean Piaget. He developed 6 stages of moral development. Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Our concepts of the world around us are descriptive concepts, influence our sense of what we ought to do in that world, are normative concepts. There are 6 stages, like I mentioned, across 3 different levels: pre-conventional level, conventional level, and post-conventional level. The pre-conventional stage of moral development occurs in infancy and toddler. The levels contain obedience and punishment and self-interest. In this stage, the child seeks to avoid punishment and please others in order to gain benefits. They're moral because it benefits them to be so. This very selfish stage, as we know, infants aren't very interested in others' feelings. They haven't quite developed that thought process yet. The conventional stage of moral development is for school-age children. The levels are conformity, interpersonal accord, and authority social order. In this stage, children learn about rules of society and how they should obey them. No distinction is drawn between moral principles and legal principles in this stage. The belief that morality keeps society in one piece is contained in this stage. So this is morals in general. The idea that we should follow the rules because they're there. Post-conventional stage of moral development is for teens and adults, and it contains social contract and universal principle. In this stage, we learn that there is a difference between moral right and wrong and legal right and wrong. So where there wasn't the distinction in the previous stage, there is in this stage. And Kohlberg stated that it's actually uncommon for many people to get to this stage. The flipped classroom model and constructivism. So I found that the flipped classroom promotes experiential learning, which is learning through the completion of activities. Through group activities, students can utilize problem solving and critical thinking to learn the content that they couldn't do with just a lecture. Construct knowledge together in the classroom rather than having students do so at home. So instead of the students doing it alone, they can do it in a group of the class. This flipped classroom model also supports the constructivist idea that learning is facilitated through social interaction and experience. So the video I chose to show actually contains thoughts about Jean Piaget and his cognitive development stages. We actually went over this in one of my counseling classes. I am getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I decided to use this assignment as me pretending to become a psychology teacher in high school. So I would show this short video, which is a wrap about Piaget's different stages of cognitive development and how to remember them, and then we would do the 5 activities following. The learning stations I would use would be discussion area, chart design, research center, reading corner, and review center. In the discussion area, I'll have the students discuss previously assigned reading that I would assign with the video since the video is so short, and they will determine which set of developmental stages they most agree with and why, based on the unit we've covered as a whole. They will also compare and contrast Piaget's stages of cognitive development with Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. There is a lot of overlap between the two, and they are compared frequently, so I feel like this would be a doable activity. This relates to constructivism because through this activity, students are shown how their peers think, and they learn how to think critically. They have a unique viewpoint into how others think that they don't normally in a regular classroom setting. In the chart design center, I would have the students create their own chart depicting Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So it's like the chart I had of the other stages. I would have them do their own chart so they could write down in their own words what each stage entails. And they could also draw pictures, color on it, make it pretty, make it a way for them to easily remember it. This relates through constructivism because this activity, students will be able to describe the stages in their own words in a way that they will better understand. In the research center, students will use laptops to research Piaget's theory of cognitive development in detail and take notes to share with the class so that we can in turn make our own chart to add any information that is obviously correct, but that we might not have learned about in our book. This relates to constructivism because learners must individually discover and transform complex information if they are to make it their own. This gives them an opportunity to look up information themselves and become the researcher themselves. In the reading corner, students will read peer-reviewed journal articles that I found on psychological experiments and research that have utilized Piaget's theories and stages. There's a lot of different work out there and a lot of experiments and research studies on children utilize the different theories and stages. This relates to constructivism because through this activity, students will actively construct knowledge by continually assimilating and accommodating new information. So they can learn new information while adding it to what they already know. The last stage would be the review center. Students can use flashcards to quiz each other on the different stages of Piaget and his theory of cognitive development. But I would also include flashcards from other psychologists in the unit, and that way it would be a more comprehensive review center. This relates to constructivism because according to the constructivist approach, students will more easily discover and comprehend difficult concepts if they can talk with each other about the problems. This gives them an opportunity to discuss the different psychologists and the different theories and stages in a group and study at the same time. This is my references page, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you so much.